Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Jaime Agostino. We've all heard the phrase psychological safety, but what does it actually mean? Is it being comfortable, being heard, feeling respected? Today, we're unpacking what psychological safety really looks like in the workplace and why it matters more than many of us realize. So joining me for this conversation, we have Jeanne Heath and Melanie Lambie, both with Vizzo Financial. Melanie, would you mind going ahead and introducing yourself to our audience?
My name is Melanie Lambie. I'm the Senior HR Generalist here at Vizzo Financial, and I've been here for just over 6 years.
All right. And Jeanne?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeanne Heath, and I'm the Director of Engagement and Learning for Vizzo Financial. And I have been here just over 11 years.
All right. And this is a topic that is being talked a lot about in our industry. Jeanne, you recently were at a chapter meeting and you were one of the panelists there. So these conversations are happening a lot. So again, thank you both for being here. So let's start right out of the gate. What does psychological safety mean to you personally and professionally? And why is it essential for mental health at work?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start us off. So when I think of psychological safety, the psychological aspect is our thoughts and our ideas. In a professional environment, we want to be able to safely express those thoughts and ideas respectfully, and we want others to listen to what we're saying and be open to what we're sharing.
Yeah. I think that's a great definition. I'd probably add a little bit as well in thinking about, when you're working in a team, first of all, psychological safety always comes up in a team aspect. It's never when you're just by yourself, but when you're working in a team, you're never going to risk being authentic or vulnerable with that team unless you believe that you're not going to be penalized or ridiculed for showing up as who you are. Also, you want to know that it's going to be okay to speak up if you don't agree with the group, and that you won't be penalized if you make mistakes. So psychological safety has a bit of a blend of respect and trust there. And what I like is, in the research that I've done on this a little bit, they said that it shows up also when colleagues trust and respect each other and feel obligated, not just that they are comfortable, but obligated to be candid with each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. So can you share a moment when you felt psychologically safe or unsafe at work and what made the difference?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be happy to start off with that one. And I have an example really of both for a while. I've worked most of my career in financial services, but for a while I did work for a formalized consulting company. And in that environment, it was one where I really felt very unsafe. And part of that was it was really run by an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Um, there certainly was an atmosphere of being penalized. I mean, people were even set up to almost, even as adults, tell on each other. We didn't have jobs that played to our strengths. There was never any compassion there, and we were berated frequently in front of the clients. So really a very unsafe environment. I'm thankful though that I have an example of the other side as well. I've worked in an environment where I really felt very safe and supported. There was lots of encouragement among the team members. We cared for each other, not only at work, but outside of work as well. There was a growth mindset. And when we made mistakes, there was certainly not a blaming atmosphere, but like, okay, how can we work together to fix it, make sure everything's okay, and move on? We were recognized a lot, and we were given work that played to our strengths. So, yeah, certainly polar opposites there.
Yeah. All right. So, Melanie, I'll ask you the next question. What signals tell leaders that their teams feel unsafe, and what barriers typically prevent employees from speaking up?
Sure. When teams feel unsafe, they don't speak up or offer opinions, they don't ask questions, mistakes are covered up or blame is placed, there's no support for each other, there's no encouragement. So, no engagement, as defined by Gallup, is not providing discretionary effort. People assume they're not going to be given the benefit of doubt. They fear negative reactions when they ask for help. Instead, candor is allowed and expected in healthy environments.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that.
All right. So then how do everyday leadership behaviors, including, communication style or workload expectations, transparency, help shape trust and influence mental health?
I'll start with this one. I have an example, and if anyone's listening to this podcast who was also at the panel discussion, they might have heard this same example, but it fits so well. Um, some of the everyday leadership behaviors that people want to see is they don't want to wonder or be concerned about what their leader is thinking. And I think that enhances mental health in a certainly positive way. They want to know what to expect from their leader. And when they do that, their confidence is built and they don't have fear. And the example I have is when I started my career, I've been, as I said, in financial services my whole career, but I started as a teller. And the branch that I worked at, our manager was a single person. And Mondays were the worst day for us because if she had a date that weekend and it went well, then Mondays were great. We knew what to expect. She would sometimes bring donuts. She'd be, "Hi, how are you?" But if her date did not go as well, we would never know. She would come in, she would close the door to her office, not even really talk to us. But what made us feel so unsafe is we never knew what to expect. We weren't on the date with her on Saturday. Um, so it really just made an awkward environment for us where people did feel unsafe. So when people know what to expect from their leaders and how they might react to things, I think that really shapes trust and for sure influences mental health in a positive way.
Melanie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that whenever you know where you stand, with your supervisor, that definitely helps with mental health because you know where you're at, you're doing a good job, or you know where you need to make corrections. So I agree with Jeanne.
Okay. So then what subtle or overlooked actions can erode psychological safety and contribute to burnout or distress?
Um, I think, we are a strengths-based organization here, and one of the measurement tools that we use is Gallup's Q12 employee engagement survey. And I think that when the things that are on that survey are missing, that can erode a lot of your psychological safety or contribute to burnout. So the things that you might look for, if there is a lack of communication, if there's no recognition, if I've never been asked for my opinion, or even maybe you asked for it, but you always dismiss it. I think the other thing that is interesting here that doesn't always come up is it can erode psychological safety if you are always fixing my mistakes as a leader. I think sometimes leaders think that that is helpful, but really what it ends up doing is eroding my confidence. So really an environment where you might help me to fix the mistake, but you're not doing it for me or doing it and not even telling me. I think all of those things, when they are not there, you definitely see an environment where there's not psychological safety and people feel burned out because they're always wondering.
So, how should managers respond when somebody's showing signs of burnout, or what practical steps can they, take, tomorrow to start creating this safer environment?
I'll take that one. So burnout is not caused by a single temporary stressful event, but by long-term accumulated pressure. So often when you have little control or support, and some things a manager can do to help employees avoid burnout include distributing work based on strengths, checking in regularly, understanding different work styles and needs. Some employees need flexibility, others may need autonomy, they may need partnership. So really, work with your employee and, help them succeed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Melanie there. I would just say maybe throw out a question that you could ask people when you start to see signs. I mean, as she said, try not to get to burnout, but when you're starting to see signs where people might be stressed or overwhelmed, How about ask them, hey, are you feeling exhausted or overwhelmed? And then explore that with them a little bit. And then maybe it provides an environment where they feel they can talk about it and you don't get to that bad part.
Okay. So, what tools and resources can organizations offer their teams to support mental health more holistically without placing, emotional labor on employees?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the wellness program. So, what resources do you have? Our wellness program, we have some Teams challenges, they have some documentation on their website. So, that just kind of keeps that on the forefront of people's minds. And then we also have the EAP program. So, you can promote that, you can refer your employees to that. So the EAPs, I feel like they're no longer just a couple of counseling sessions. There's just a plethora of resources on their website. They have the counseling sessions, they have resources for like if you need to do a resume or if you need to talk with a lawyer, they can help with budgets. There's so many different things that they can do. So I would suggest going on those websites as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think with so many places working with at least a partial remote staff, some things you can also do are, create some social or educational breaks throughout the days where people can come together virtually, whether it be to educate or even just for fun. At our organization, we call them culture clubs, and they run the gamut of a variety of things. But I think sometimes that can support people when they just need a break for a few minutes. The other thing is a question that was asked to me once, and I thought this was really good that you could ask in your one on one sessions is maybe say to someone, what are the top three things you need from me to be best for the company and for your family? I
Mm.
think when you're looking at both of those aspects, it tells people that you're there to be supportive of them. And again, you want to ask this before burnout starts. So to me, this is like a great question to ask either when you get a brand new employee or if you've had existing employees, maybe next time you have your one on one with them. But when you understand what helps them to be their best, then you greatly diminish the chance of burnout.
Okay. Well, sometimes these conversations with team member, they can be difficult. So what tools or practices help normalize, conversations about mental health across teams?
I think as a leader, it's important to be transparent about what's going on in your life to have that, you're building connection. Um, you can also share what supports are available. Jean mentioned checking in with your employees, asking how they're doing. And if you feel that something's going on, is there bandwidth that you can take something off their plate? I know there's been times where I've noticed that my supervisor has been really busy and I'm like, hey, let me take that. And then, vice versa. So I think whenever you're doing that, one, you're helping out with somebody that's stressed out for some reason, but then also that's teamwork. You're building that relationship. And
Mhm.
I think knowing that somebody's going to be there whenever you need it, or you just, are having an off day, then I think that really just, builds that trust and it just kind of builds momentum. So, and also helps people understand and build resiliency. You could also break down large product projects or goals into smaller pieces with intermittent milestones and check-ins. So then that way, you're seeing the progress, you're meeting, the goals as you're going through.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Seeing that success along the way.
Mhm.
So, so how can organizations reinforce psychological safety beyond benefits? Jean, you already kind of talked a little bit culture, but also like systems and leadership modeling. Could you, talk to that?
Yeah, sure. I think some things that you could do, first of all, normalize mistakes. We all make mistakes, and nobody in the morning sets their alarm. And when it goes off, clicks the alarm and says, I'm going to go in today and purposely make some mistakes. Nobody does that. So just normalize the fact that sometimes things happen. What do we need to do to fix it and move forward? I think you can also reinforce safety with your team. There's a couple questions from the Gallup organization that I thought were really valuable in reinforcing psychological safety. One is saying to them, what can we count on each other for? When I know what I can count on my team for, it builds that safety and that trust. What's our team purpose? So, do we all know what we're doing here and what we're striving for? Um, what's the reputation we aspire to have? So, what's our purpose and where do we want to go almost?
Mhm.
And then is there anything that maybe we need to do differently to achieve that? I think all of those things foster healthy discussion, which then builds that safety for people, especially if what they have to say, excuse me, is slightly different from the rest of the group. That's totally okay. The other thing I think for us, one of our core values is continue to learn. And I firmly believe that if you're going to be a learning organization, then you have to also be an organization that's okay with mistakes, because mistakes are one of the best ways as adults that we learn. We did it wrong. We don't like making mistakes. So we're usually pretty determined to figure out what do I have to do so it doesn't happen again. So when one of the things that you value is learning, then normalizing mistakes also comes that way. And a byproduct of normalizing mistakes, I think, is allowing vulnerability. Like, oh, I'm just not at my best today. All of that makes it okay for people.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I've been having brain fog. And so like I had a conversation with somebody earlier. I'm like, I apologize. I'm having a little bit of brain fog. Please
Yeah.
help me through this. I want to make sure I get you what you need. Could you help explain it a little bit more? So we all struggle with that some from time to time. So
Yeah.
uh,
And I think sometimes when you're willing to be vulnerable, it opens the door and allows the other person, maybe they responded to you and said, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one, or oh, don't worry, that happens to me sometimes. So they find that camaraderie there then.
yeah. So what role do clear boundaries and shared expectations play into maintaining both high performance as well as well-being?
I think when people know and understand what's expected of them, they can feel free to do the work in the way that's best for them and it plays to their strengths. And those high performing teams meet goals, and then that brings a sense of satisfaction and it just provides them momentum. And if you are working on a high performing team, then you have others that are helping you out and you're building that team camaraderie. And it just, like I said, I love the word momentum, because other people jump in, and that's whenever people enjoy coming to work because they know that they have that good team that's going to have their back.
I
Well,
agree.
thank you both so much for joining me today. Any final thoughts you would like to share with our audience?
Sure, I'll start, Jean. I think the idea here really is we want employees to feel that we can express our thoughts and ideas, knowing that others may not feel the same, and that's okay. So a small example that I have is I have a couple friends from some other countries, and it's fun to talk about the World Cup that we had just recently had, and I watched games with the friends, and knowing that we all have different opinions on teams and players, and some people are really into their teams, but I felt comfortable talking to my friends about the things that I knew that they disagree with. And, it was okay to do so. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Because, people don't become defensive about what you're saying. They become defensive more about why you're saying it. So that safety Melanie talked about with her team of friends, they were comfortable, each rooting maybe for different teams at different times. So because they felt comfortable in that environment, they didn't feel like they were going to have any issues because maybe they rooted for one team versus another. So when you talk about safety, it's really all about your intent. And in her example, that intent was to get together and enjoy the game, not to talk about what's right, wrong, or indifferent. So it's more thinking about what's your intent and not necessarily your content.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you both. So, psychological safety, it isn't built in a single conversation. It's built in the moments that follow. Every question you welcome, every idea you consider, and every person you encourage helps create a workplace where people can do their best work. Again, thank you, Jeanne and Melanie, for joining me today. And I also need to give a special thanks to Viso Financial's Education for sponsoring today's episode. Just like education we just received here on this podcast, Viso Financial is dedicated to providing quality, relevant education to the credit union industry. From webinars, blogs, podcasts, conferences, and more, Viso Financial is committed to the core value of continue to learn. Learn more about all the educational resources available to your credit union. Many of them are free by visiting Viso Financial's website, www.vfccu.org. As always, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe and make it a great day.